Hey mini toads are ready to learn more from yours truly, and I'm sorry that I haven't posted my Spongebob Season 3 reviewed yet, so to apologize, I'm gonna go instead do my videos in this format. I'm gonna go back to Spongebob Season 3, but for now, let's move on to Spongebob Season 4. Yeah! Let's go! Football! Number 38, Squidward. This is honestly the worst episode of SpongeBob. For one, Squidward's spawn make this universe definitely the lowest example of an episode that's against Squidward. Number 37, Good Neighbors. And this is the episode that most people consider to be the worst Squidward torture episode of the season, but I don't really say that. Because, to be honest, this episode still does some wrong, but it still does it a little less worse. Like, to be honest, Squidward's torture is still bad, but he does still sometimes act like a little bit of a jerk, I guess. And I mean, Squidward's punishment in the end is way too severe. And SpongeBob and Patrick also working with him, yeah, Squidward just really doesn't deserve any of this. But the reason why it's so low is because the reason why it's not the worst is just because it still has some fun things. It still is pretty fun when SpongeBob and Patrick are painting Squidward's house, and I did enjoy the Keep It Spotless commercial showing that. Just a really bad episode, definitely don't watch it. But if you're gonna either watch Good Neighbors or Squidward, watch this episode. Number 36, The Lost Mattress. So the thing about this episode is it's just not really all that interesting. I mean, a lot of people really love this episode and consider it to be one of the best episodes of SpongeBob Season 4, but here's the main reason why I think this one's bad. Squidward's punishment is too severe. I know that this is very controversial, but just trust me. Squidward always trying to do is take all of the credit. I mean, I get that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, that's all? Wow, that's definitely not a lot at all. Just shut up if you're saying that. Squidward, not only, Squidward tries to take all of the credit, and then his punishment is trying to run for his stinking life at the end of the episode. The reason why it's not as bad as the other two episodes is, well, Patrick is still pretty likable. I do like how he can actually be pretty smart in this episode. It's just Squidward's torture in the episode really sucks away any good potential that this episode had. Number 35, The Thing. Dang, 4 Squidward torture episodes in a row? That's a new record. So, to be honest, The Thing is just not really all that good. The Thing, it's basically jellyfishing, but the reason why it's done better is because SpongeBob and Patrick don't know that it's Squidward that they're torturing. Because I've said it once and I'll say it again, jellyfishing is the worst episode of pre-movie SpongeBob. For being boring and frustrating. But this episode is still better. It's just Squidward's punishment in the end's a little bad, and it's just not really all that interesting. Considering that's a rehash of a bad episode, doesn't really do a lot to make it original, and SpongeBob and Patrick can still be really annoying. Yeah, that pretty much just adds up to a really bad episode. No, seriously, go insert that in your calculator. It'll show that it adds up to that. Number 34, Wigstruck. To be honest with you, I've never liked this episode. Wigstruck has always had a bad rap with me. For one, Wigstruck is basically about SpongeBob getting a new wig and then enjoying himself about it, but everyone else laughs at him. Yes, the wig's pretty grotesque. Yes, SpongeBob does kind of go rub it into people, but I don't really get why SpongeBob deserves how everybody laughs at him. Honestly, he's just kind of mean. And, well, the thing is, it still has some funny jokes, especially that whole Squidward's locked me in the freezer tons of times, so I think I know what cool is. But still, once Sandy makes SpongeBob get rid of the wig, it seems like she's just doing it so that she doesn't feel embarrassed around SpongeBob. And then, later on in the episode, SpongeBob actually SpongeBob or the wigs now are really popular and a huge sensation, and then SpongeBob is taunted for not having a wig. This ending is what really makes me upset. After all of this time that SpongeBob's been spent being insulted, for Ned and the Needlefish having the wig, it's just a really cheap ending, and just not really a good episode. Don't watch it. Number 33, Skill Crane. This is a less bad Squidward torture episode. To be honest with you, well, I don't really mind this as much as other Squidward torture episodes. Excuse me. This episode can still be really bad in some cases. There's some moments where I feel really bad for Squidward, and he does end up Squidward makes me feel so bad for Squidward. Number 32, The Gift of Gum. Here we are with the finale of this season and the first episode that actually makes me feel that Patrick is a jerk. This is the lowest that Patrick's jerkiness has gone in this season. I mean, SpongeBob just wants to get rid of this giant thing of gum. And I can see it's disgusting, not pleasant to look at. Wait, don't those mean the same thing? And it's also just really boring. The episode's really boring. The gum's drab. Patrick's pretty annoying. The ending's stupid. It's just not really a good episode. But, well, there's really nothing saving it. It's just pretty blah. Number 31, Driven to Tears. I know what you're thinking. But Patrick's But there's definitely a worse episode, and it's actually paired with this one. Yes, I know that a lot of people hate Rule of Dumb, but here's the thing. Patrick, I'm pretty sure, learns his lesson in the end. But this episode is treating SpongeBob like he also did something wrong. I mean, this is treating SpongeBob too like he's doing something wrong. Patrick is just going around pretty much rubbing it into SpongeBob that he has a license and SpongeBob doesn't. Well, SpongeBob just has to kind of sit along with the ride and just hold in his emotions, which it's really sad for me because it's so relatable to me. It's just not really that big. It's just not special, and it's just no. I just don't like it. Number 30, Squidbob Tentacle Pants. Here we are with a huge gap where the episodes can be arranged in a lot of ways. From here all the way up to number 10, a lot of these episodes can just be interchangeable. So Squidbob Tentacle Pants is just meh. Like, Squidbob Tentacle Pants is just about SpongeBob and Squidward getting fused together, and it's really grotesque, and that ending is just disgusting. It's just not much outside of gross imagery, which isn't really a good thing for me to begin with. So yeah, it might be the worst of this mediocre thing, but there might also be worse. We really don't know yet. Number 29, Enemy-in-Law. This episode, I just hate that ending. Like, this episode has an interesting concept. Plankton trying to date Mama Krabs, which I can see that. But then they just shoehorn a Plankton tries to take the formula pod inside of it. The episode was just bland before now, but this is just dumb. They just kind of like just put this in just randomly. It's just not it's enough to go not have a really fun episode. But this episode, that ending where Mama Krabs is about to punch Plankton, and then Plankton tells Karen, look who came crawling back. It's just not funny. There's not really much else to say. It's just blah. It's blah. Wait, didn't I already say that already? Number 28, that's no lady. This episode is a little disturbing. Patrick basically dresses up. Patrick basically dresses up as a woman in cross dresses. Cross dresses, which I get that was really common back then, but in a time like when this episode was aired, cross dressing wasn't really that big of a thing. And I don't really know how much kids say, hey, did you love that SpongeBob episode where Patrick cross-dressed? Oh yeah, that was so funny. Yeah. So this episode is, speaking of which, this episode's not funny. Mr. Krabs and Squidward just kind of go force Patrick against his will to go inside of the Krusty Krab. And they just kind of force him into working there and then don't really let him leave. And they basically put him in just to go hit on him. And the whole get out of town thing, I think that's what's saving this episode. The get out of town gag was actually pretty funny. Not much else to say, so let's just move on. Number 27, Rule of Dumb. I thought you might be wondering when we were gonna see Rule of Dumb. Anyway, this episode should have probably been number 30, but like I said, there was a huge gap where I could have rearranged the episodes in any order. Still, this episode is just about Patrick being overall a bad person. This is all about Patrick just being an unlikable jerk with no real punishment. I mean, he does learn his lesson in the end and doesn't want the king's crown. I think he was doing that because he feels like he was being too selfish, which definitely is better than the ending of Driven to Tears. And Patrick's mean things here will worse him than Driven to Tears. At least we can still think that SpongeBob is not on Patrick's side and is just doing it because he's forced. So it's not really like we think that SpongeBob's also being unlikable. So, like a lot of these episodes, not much to say. It's just a really bad episode. Number 26. All That Glitters. Also, I got a little bit of white from the slide on the side. Anyway, so this episode is about SpongeBob losing his spatula. It breaks with the monster Krabby Patty joke, which a lot of people seem to find this episode really irritating, but I don't really see what they're going with. Yes, the running gags can be pretty annoying, but they still don't drag on for nearly as long as people. One thing that's redeeming this episode a little bit is the whole doctor thing. Like the whole I'm not a real doctor was actually pretty funny, and I actually went back and watched the episode and counted the seconds. It's only 11 seconds long. No, I'm not kidding. Including the return of the joke later, the gag is literally only 11 seconds long. So, as you can see, people just kind of over-exaggerate the episode. It doesn't make the episode all that good, though. It's still really annoying, really loud, really obnoxious, just really bad. It's just not as bad as people claim it to be. Number 25, Whale of a Birthday. This is Pie Rules' second least favorite episode of this season. Whale of a Birthday is just... Well, I don't really see the hate for this episode. I mean, some of Mr. Krabs' cheap jokes are pretty funny, like it tastes like dishwater. It is dishwater. Anyway, but then we get over to the parts that aren't good. How does it make any sense that Squidward likes the boys who cry? Isn't he a fan of classical music? Plus, there's also other dumb things, like Mr. Krabs not even willing to give Pearl a cake. That's how cheap he is. and other problems. There's just a lot of problems in this episode that could have just easily been fixed by maybe making Mr. Krabs care a little bit more. Still, this episode just doesn't really do well. Number 24, Karate Island. This episode definitely has the most interesting title card of all of them as the Karate and Island fly in. So then this episode drags it on the the beginning just setting up SpongeBob seeing a Karate Island tape with literally the exact same effect from the title card. Seriously. That's an obvious recycle. And then Sandy just feels jealous about SpongeBob. SpongeBob being happy for what he's like just makes Sandy pretty jealous. Plus, there's also other boring things. The whole references to 4Kids I never really get because I don't watch that. It's just really uninteresting. And to top it all off, Sandy just suddenly starts a topic about real estate in the end. It just feels a little off topic, to be honest with you. Not anything else to say here. Number 23, New Leaf. So this episode just feels really annoying. New Leaf just has an ending that basically tries to psych you, but since you know Plankton's character, it doesn't. The entire ending just doesn't really get a lot out of you. Plus, the actual episode, well, New Leaf is just a new level of uninteresting, boring. It's just, again, uninteresting. Excuse me. Mr. Krabs breaking into Plankton's dream is really annoying, but after you know what it is, there's just no reason to rewatch this episode. That's pretty much how I describe this episode. No reason to go watch it after the first time. Number 22. Also, you can hardly see the 22. But don't worry, the number will become even less visible later. Patrick's Smart Pants. This episode is just boring. So Patrick getting smart is an awesome concept. I like the idea. It's just, it doesn't really take it anywhere. I mean, I get that Patrick's smartness can be pretty funny, but I just like how he just insults Squidward's clarinet playing. I mean, I get it. People dislike Squidward's clarinet playing. But here, what reason does Patrick have to go say that he will never learn? It's just, yeah, Patrick is pretty obnoxious in this episode. The episode just kind of drags it on in some parts. The Sandy bit they could have kind of cut out. In fact, they could have probably just cut out this entire episode, and I don't think anyone would really miss it. So just really bland. Number 21, Funny Pants. A lot of people really over-exaggerate this episode. I think this is where the episode starts to get less bad things. I mean, yes, SpongeBob's really loud laughter can get really annoying, but the thing is, SpongeBob's laughter in this episode just isn't that big. I mean, I get that SpongeBob's laughter could be annoying, and that ending is pretty dumb, but some of the gags where SpongeBob doesn't have to laugh, or SpongeBob can't laugh, are actually really funny and well done. Especially the thing with the whoopee cushions and them being crashed in with the guy running the pie van, and instead of having an airbag, he just has a pie. That was funny. There's just a lot of funny stuff in this episode that people ignore. It's just, I wish that Squidward's torture could have been put to a minimum. Number 20, Squidtastic Voyage. This is probably the best Squidward torture episode in this season. But it's not really like it's all that good. I think that the episode is great. I like some of the comments. I like some of the visuals inside of Squidward. But the whole dancing scene just feels like it was just there to go support the ending. And it's just, There's not really much else that I can say about this episode because it's just kind of there. Number 19, Hocus Pocus. This episode, the only problem with it is that we already know that it's not Squidward that got turned into an ice cream cone. It's really the only issue, though. Some of the gags here are pretty funny. I like how SpongeBob thought that Squidward is melting and that Patrick was eating Squidward. In this episode, but that whole thing in the end, or near the end, though, of the guy being fake. So yeah, just an episode that I wish we'd get a little more love, but just not really all that much more. Number 18, Wishing You Well. Here's an episode that's overrated. This episode is often praised. How people really seem to enjoy the throw your dreams down the well song, but I don't really see it. It's just, I get that it's magical, but the first time around, it's really uninteresting. Although the second time where they're actually digging deeper in the well was pretty well done. See what I did there? Well done. And then, continuing on with the theme of the episode, they find magic, and then Squidward doesn't actually use the magic. I mean, I don't really get why the magic was even there before Squidward fell in, because he didn't even throw down a coin, so it's not like it's not like SpongeBob and Patrick really did anything. And it's just, like, I do enjoy some things, but Mr. Krabs is still his usual cheap self. The only reason why he makes this wishing well is to make a cheap buck. And to top it all off, we get Patrick probably. I'll just explain it some other time. Yeah, I think that this episode could have done a little bit better, though. It's just pretty mediocre. Number 17, Krusty Towers. So, if you couldn't tell, we're at the exact middle of the list. So, Krusty Towers is another mediocre episode. This episode is all about a hotel. And I do enjoy a lot of things about this episode. I like all of the things in the section where Squidward was trying to go be all smug to Mr. Krabs. But I didn't enjoy the part where it made Squidward have to do tons of insane tasks. That part just felt a little unnecessary. And then there was a lot of really boring. Like, the thing is, this episode can be pretty boring, and I just would have ended it with Squidward, SpongeBob, and Patrick playing inside of the bathtub. Maybe I could have had a thing about, like, breakfast with Squidward to go extend the episode a little more, so that could have been the ending. But no, we have to make the hotel break. We have to go make Squidward have to go be dragged into another idea because Squidward can't be happy. It's just dumb. The ending is just there to go say, stick it, Squidward. So yeah, if that ending and Squidward having to deal with this wasn't in the episode, then it could have been good. Number 16, Selling Out. Here we go. Now we're into some pretty decent stuff. This is about Mr. Krabs actually learning that cheapness doesn't always solve everything. Because once you're being too cheap, you'll actually go sell out. So yeah, in this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick in this episode, Mr. Krabs goes and sells the Krusty Krab for tons of money. Which then, after he realizes that was a bad idea, and a pretty funny joke about him doing golf. He just kind of goes and drifts away. Although honestly, the one bad thing is the whole picture of Mr. Krabs teaching Pearl to go ride a bike, even though Mr. Krabs later says that he was gonna go. Fake parody of those horror movies. I think it's funny how they just think that they're zombies. I like that whole Squidward being a zombie joke in the end of the episode. I think that that's a little underappreciated. Which then we get over to some other good gags. The whole sponge, the whole thing is, I do enjoy the whole Splinter thing, but I do think that it was pretty dumb how that entire thing could fit inside of Gary. It's just, this episode's really fun to watch. It just I just kind of wish that I had a little more. Number 14, Ghost Host. Probably the creepiest title card to be this blurry. Yes, I'm aware that the title cards are blurry. I just had to go stretch them out, okay? Okay. So, yeah. In this episode, SpongeBob, or the Flying Dutchman's ship breaks, and then he starts living with SpongeBob. This episode has a perfect horror thing, where if you do that freak out, creep out thing a lot, then people are going to start getting sick of it. Yeah, this episode does a really good job with the whole idea. It feels really fun. It's just good. I wish that there could be more episodes like this, but the fact that the Flying Dutchman ship was already repaired just kind of makes Flying Dutchman seem really soft. The whole entire premise was okay, but it just doesn't really do a lot to be interesting. So this is again one of those things that's really interchangeable. It kind of depends on how I feel while watching it. Number 13. I guess I forgot to put that anywhere. Mrs. Puff, you're fired. This episode is Mrs. Puff getting fired. A genius. Okay, all jokes aside, my favorite parts in this episode, like, I just really love that general guy. He's really funny, and it's just really good. The whole entire episode is great. I love to see this episode a lot. There's a lot of good gags about SpongeBob, or about Mrs. Puff being fired. I like the war general. He's really funny. The entire episode can be described as an awesome war general getting tormented by Spongebob. Although I don't really get why they couldn't just make an exception for Spongebob driving with the blindfold so that Mrs. Puff wouldn't have to suffer anymore. Number 12. See, this is the one that's even harder to look at than one of the ones earlier. Krabs versus Plankton. This is the most interchangeable episode that I just put high because, well, why not? So this episode is about Mr. Krabs being against Plankton, or against Mr. Plankton inside of the court. Mr. Plankton. Anyway, so this episode is just kind of meh. This is actually really meh, come to think of it. Mr. Krabs and Plankton being inside of the court just doesn't really feel like enough to be an entire episode and not just like a 7-minute short, which we don't really see a lot of in this season. And by not a lot, I mean we don't see that this season. So yeah, Mr. Krabs being against Plankton in court is a good idea. It just doesn't really bring it a lot, and it doesn't really feel like enough for an 11-minute episode. Number 11, best day ever. This would probably be very interchangeable and probably the most controversial pick to be this high. A lot of people really hate this episode, but the only reason why I dislike it, like, I dislike how boring the episode is, but the only reason why it's up here is probably because of how rare the episode is. Nickelodeon barely airs it. So yeah, this episode just doesn't really do a lot, but it's just, the reason why it's so redeemable is that song. The Best Day Ever is a really underrated gem. I love it. Yeah, not much to say. Just an episode that would be good. It just doesn't really do it. Finally, here we are at the top 10. Number 10, have you seen the snail? Now, the only reason why I really put up here is because my friend really enjoys this episode. Can't really say his name on YouTube because, well, then you probably know more information about me, and my parents won't allow that. Oh no! I said something! Okay, all joking aside, my favorite parts are, like, the relationship feels really genuine. I really like this relationship. It feels really real. But what's the problem with this episode? It's, once again, not funny. What funny things are to be had here? Is it just supposed to be funny that SpongeBob is against Gary? And if they're going for a more serious episode, they could have probably done it a little better. This is the lesser of the two half-hour specials in this season. Number 9, Best Friends and being against each other while also kind of being with each other to go stop the kelp shake restaurant. The reason why it's a little low, or why it's a little lower than you'd expect, is because I don't really like how Plankton is kind of suffering here. I mean, I agree with Plankton being angry at Mr. Krabs. The episode is really funny, though. I like some of the schemes. Just a lot about this episode is really enjoyable. Just the whole, just a lot of the concepts just aren't really part of it. Like, a lot of the things just aren't really part of it. But overall, a really good episode, and definitely beats all of the episodes in that number 30 to number 11 chunk. Number 8, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 6, the motion picture. Here we are with the gems. This episode is amazing. It definitely goes right to the point. It goes right to the point of the movie. The actual movie itself so cheesy and low budget, you gotta love it. The whole entire thing about SpongeBob trying to make a movie, it does actually show how genuinely hard it is to go make a movie, especially if the people don't want to cooperate. Excuse me. So yeah, this episode is really good, really entertaining, just really fine. Although I dislike some of the gross imagery in the episode, which is what's keeping it down. I dislike the gross imagery of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy after Squidward deals with them. Although I do love that "did somebody say boom" joke. Number 7. This is the hardest thing to go see the number on. It's right above the Born part, by the way. Born to be Wild. This episode is about SpongeBob and Patrick wanting to go be wild so that they can survive against a biker gang. I'm not exactly sure fully what their plot is, but it's still really funny. The aesthetics here are really good. I love that funny guy from the mine shaft. What is like, do you know who the wild ones are? No, I don't know you either. Yeah, the episode also has the blood versus diet blood thing. It's just really funny and really memorable. What's that's the thing about SpongeBob season 4? A lot of its episodes are really memorable and actually stick out more than pre-movie SpongeBob. Number 6, Bummer Vacation. This episode is really good. This definitely tops the previous 3 by a lot. So in Bummer Vacation, SpongeBob actually goes again. Like in this episode, SpongeBob actually has a really good role. He's trying to go desperately get back into the Krusty Krab despite Mr. Krabs not wanting him to be in. He also really feels kind of creepy in some parts. And yeah, the thing is though, I dislike how I do love how creepy the episode can be, and a lot of the jokes are really funny. Just I don't really get why SpongeBob can't even be in there for lunch. I mean, I get that it looked like he was cooking Krabby Patties, but why didn't Patrick explain it at all? Still, a really decently entertaining episode. Number 5, Chimps Ahoy. Honestly, this episode and the last one can be changed up. So, the thing is, Chimps Ahoy is a really fun and solid episode, despite what everyone says about it just being a little bit over mediocre. So, the episode actually feels really good. I like the parody of of it not being clear of how Sandy or why Sandy is underwater. I love how they even make fun of it. So yeah, it kind of does a lot of good stuff. I like how Sandy is actually being monitored. It's just pretty fun, pretty entertaining, pretty good. So what else is really there to say? It's just a really fun episode, and that So Long Bikini Bottom song is definitely one of the best. Number 4, Shell of a Man. So this episode is probably the best episode with Mr. Krabs in it. I was gonna say something else. So this episode is about, and I quote, Mr. Krabs trying to go to a Navy place. Like, this is about Mr. Krabs trying to go over to a Navy place. Sorry, I'm not really being all that interesting. You can only do so much with 36 straight minutes of recording. Make that 36 and a half. What, still, like, Mr. Krabs being really fun, really good. This episode's really good. I love all of the Mr. Krabs. I like Mr. Krabs being really manly in the end. It's just not really as good as people say it is. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still amazing. It just isn't really as good as people make it out to be. Number 3, the Pink Purloiner. The you never hours through high-powered binoculars, and I would kill for a net like that. You know, something small like carrots, but not spiders. They're icky. Yeah, the thing, it's really fun. I like how SpongeBob, like, this is basically the secret box done right because the jokes are actually funny, and Patrick isn't as mean with his secret. Although I do dislike how how Patrick just tries to make SpongeBob feel sorry for him in the end. Number 2, Fear of a Krabby Patty. This will forever be one of the most classic episodes of SpongeBob, period. This episode, the only problem with it is SpongeBob maybe screaming a little bit too much. But everything else is great. I love all of the jokes. I love the random old person in the montage sequence. I love the plankton part, especially a lot of the jokes told about therapy. I love SpongeBob trying to go finish Mr. Krabs' sentence. I love a lot about this episode. This episode is brilliant. I love Fear of a Krabby Patty. It's probably one of the best episodes of SpongeBob. But do you know what is the best episode? Coming up. Number 1, Dunces and Dragons. This season has the worst and best episodes of SpongeBob, along with the huge chunk that's mediocre. This season's really interesting. Anyway, Dunces and Dragons is by far the greatest. This episode is brilliant. Even my parents seem to enjoy it, and I pretty much overran them with SpongeBob. Anyway, yeah. Dunces and Dragons is a really funny episode. I like some of the things. Honestly, I think that this episode can do no harm. I'll probably talk about this more in detail later, But for now, I think it's about time that I end this 40-minute long video. Or it's about to be 40 minutes, so let's go drag out the time. No. Okay, all jokes aside, Dungeons and Dragons is just really good. It's memorable, it's good, it's awesome. Goodbye.